Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. All right, so look, I have talked about in my last video the more technical implications of the Browns potentially having to trade Myles Garrett. And I talked about it and covered it from a perspective of what the team is thinking and what Myles is thinking. But I want to spend this video talking not to the perspective of the team or the perspective of Myles Garrett, the two sides of this debate. I want to have a conversation with the folks kind of who are going to be made to kind of eat the brunt of whatever fallout there is between these two parties. And that's Browns fans, right? Browns fans in the last 4 years have caught so much collateral damage based on a bunch of things that have happened for the Browns. Some of these things have been some of the highest moments that we've had in our fandom since 1999. The Browns winning a playoff game, the Browns getting to the playoffs 2 times in 3 years, a level of success that we have not seen in Cleveland since 1999. And then the lowest of the lows, trading for Deshaun Watson, the failure of Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, and now your franchise player, a player that you hoped retire with your team, is now axing out. This fan base has been put in a tough spot and a very polarizing spot, because it's not like the people who are tired of the team over the last 5 years have no reason to feel that way. They have plenty of reason to feel that way. And the people who have seen this team reach higher highs than they have before have a reason to have some attachment to the people who have made some of the decisions that have also made us miserable. I keep coming back to this, and I don't think I've ever talked about it publicly, about the offseason that Deshaun Watson got traded to the Cleveland Browns and how I felt when all of that happened. Now, for those of you who have watched me for a long time, you would know that in the summer of 2022, I understood that the Browns would have to likely move on from Baker Mayfield. It just felt like that was inevitable at that point. But I did not want the person they moved on to be Deshaun Watson. I made a video about how Russ could be the guy, how Derek Carr could be the guy, how maybe you could go after Kyler Murray or something like that. Like numerous names. Deshaun Watson was not one of the names I covered because I did not have the desire to want that, given what he was accused of on the Cleveland Browns. It wasn't really about Deshaun as a player. I thought between the options, the best 2 options available that offseason were Deshaun and Russell Wilson. Ironically enough, they didn't work out for either team. But, if we're just looking at this from the perspective of just the best players available that offseason, that's where it was. But I didn't really care about that. I didn't foresee Deshaun having this epic of a fall off. I just selfishly did not want to be a part, or did not want to have to spend the next 5 to 10 years of my professional life having to force myself to be fair about somebody that I don't think is a good person. And they made the move for Deshaun, and I made the decision to kind of be professional and look at it through an analyst kind of point of view and just break down what I'm seeing on the field and take my personal feelings aside from it, because I think at the end of the day, my job is to talk about the Browns, but also from a Browns fan's perspective, and I have to balance these things, right? And I can't ignore what's going on the football field. But rewinding a little bit, when the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson, I remember this day, It was one of those days where I did not wake up early. I woke up super late. I think it was in the middle of the day. Had a long night before. I think I was working on like 3 different videos. So I went to sleep at like 5 a.m. I woke up at like noon, 1 o'clock, whenever the trade came out. I remember it'd been like an hour when the trade it came out to when I realized that the Browns had made that trade. And I was getting all these texts, people telling me congratulations, people excited about the potential of Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. And I remember feeling actually quite similarly to how I feel right now, right? It was this numb feeling, this unsure feeling. I was not like immediately excited because, again, I did not want the Browns to do that. I didn't even cover the fact that they were talking to Deshaun. I didn't want the Browns to do it. Once they did it, I had to cover it. But I just remember feeling a lot like I feel today. Because there was a part of me that knew what the reality was of getting Deshaun Watson, which was that this was going to get a little ugly. Even if it works out, this was not going to be a fun thing to talk about for the next 5-10 years. Now, he played so bad that he didn't even make it 5 years. But that's what my thought was then. I look at this Myles Garrett thing and I think to myself, there will never not be tension between the Cleveland Browns and Myles Garrett unless something changes drastically. We can talk about the fact that Myles has 4 years of control on his contract if you count the 2 years of franchise tag, and the Browns have absolutely no incentive to trade him. And that means that the Browns will likely not trade Myles Garrett. What I'm mourning here isn't necessarily Myles Garrett playing his last game in Cleveland. I don't think that's the case. I think Myles will play this next season and possibly the season after that in Cleveland. What I've been mourning, me personally, is the death of this city in Myles Garrett, this franchise in Myles Garrett, being able to have the type of relationship that his level of play and the fans' level of dedication deserves. Because of the mishandling of the Watson trade, how this team handled this season, and the result of this season, that's been sacrificed. The relationship between Myles and the city will always be scarred by this. No matter how long he stays, he could retire here. There are going to be people who never let this go. The relationship between Myles and the team, like they could change GMs out. You know, there's a level of trust that he had that he doesn't have anymore. That's going to take either a miracle to repair, or it's just not going to be fully repaired ever. And that to me sucks, because you know what? As bad as the last few years have been, right? Or at least as bad at times the last few years have been, and we've had highs and lows, and since 2020, some of the highest highs of our franchise since 1999, some of the lowest lows. Throughout all that roller coaster ride, I could at least say to myself, the Cleveland Browns had a player on that roster that was better than any player or more impactful than any individual player I've ever seen the Cleveland Browns have in my lifetime. And I get to enjoy that with no strings attached in Myles Garrett. He was drafted here. He lived up to the hype. He got the extension. He owns part of the cast. I get to enjoy that. Now with this, gets a little bit more messy. It's like it's taken another damn thing. And I have never, ever, and I never plan to be a Browns fan who seeks out or enjoys receiving pity. I hate when other fans pity Browns fans. I hate when Browns fans seek out pity, right? Like, yeah, I've done plenty of rants about the woe is me Browns fans, the feel bad for me Browns fans. I don't like that. I don't operate like that. And I don't want people outside of Cleveland to feel bad for me. And as long as we had Myles Garrett and Myles Garrett was happy to be a Cleveland Brown, I had something to be proud of with this team. We got a dude who puts fear into the hearts of other teams. Are we winning the most? No, we're working on that, right? Do we have a franchise quarterback? No, but we got Myles. And that mattered to me. And I'm just searching for why this news is like, it's ruined my day, to be honest with you. Like, I'm having a bad day now because this news broke. And I think that's why. And I'm not mad at Myles for this. I'm not even mad at like, again, when the Watson trade happened, I felt the same exact way. I wasn't mad at anybody individually for making that move, even though I hated the move. I understood why it's happening. I understood the forces at play that created this situation with the Watson trade, right? The Browns didn't have a quarterback. Baker Mayfield's not happy. You got to get rid of Baker. You had to get a quarterback. I understood the factors at play. This is not confusing to me. The same thing here is happening with Myles Garrett. I understand why Myles feels the way he does. I also understand where the Browns front office is, because as much and as easy as it would be to say, hey, we got to salvage the situation with Myles. Let's go trade 3 first-round picks for somebody's quarterback so he can feel a little bit better about playing here. I don't think that's a good idea either, right? I don't think rushing out and making a blockbuster deal for a quarterback in the hopes of making Myles happy and repairing this situation with him is a good idea. It feels like we would be repeating the same mistake that got us back into this mess with Deshaun Watson, which is, hey, we tried to flexi glue this and put a flex seal on it and fix it quick. I think the only solution for quarterback is the draft, and the reality is not every draft has quarterbacks. This is not one of those drafts that I believe has quarterbacks that'll get you into contention. I think next year's draft is the one that gets you into contention. Like, I don't think there's a quick fix to the problem here. Myles wants to play for a team that could be a Super Bowl contender. That's presumably a team with the quarterback. And the Browns are not in a position to have a long-term answer at quarterback until 2026. That's just the reality. Like, firing Andrew Berry, as much as people want to do it right now, and I'm not mad at people for feeling that way, but firing Andrew Berry is not going to manifest a quarterback, right? Like, the reality is you probably going to have to wait till next year, maybe even 2027, to get your hands on a good quarterback that could maybe do something for you. And then you got to ask yourself, do you got enough continuity? Do you got the right people in place to develop that guy? So I find it hard to manufacture anger at individuals in the Browns front office, because it's kind of what the situation is. You traded for an upgrade at quarterback. I wouldn't have advised it, but they did it. And I understood why they did it. And then it blew up in their face. It wasn't predictable why it blew up in their face. Deshaun, I mean, he had the steepest fall off of all time. It's not a predictable thing. Now they're in this situation, and I understand why this situation has made Myles want to axe out. And I think that's the worst thing of it all. I can't be furious at anybody. I understand why this team is in the situation they're in. And that, to me, is probably why I feel the same way about Myles dropping that trade request that I felt about Deshaun Watson getting traded to the Browns. Because I know at the end of the day, this is going to damage the relationship between the organization and the player. And the byproduct of that is that the fans are going to have to deal with awkwardness between the player and the organization, which is going to trickle into and be used to kind of fodder hatred against the player and the fans. And Myles Garrett is one of the best players to ever play here. And more than likely, it's going to turn into a situation where, people are going to start to try to devalue Myles Garrett in order to justify moving off of him. And we're going to have all this unnecessary vitriol for one of the greatest players to ever put on your uniform, especially since expansion, if not the greatest player to put on your uniform. I hate the position that the Browns continue to put me in. Like, I'm not a fan of it. That part is, I hope, obvious. And when I say I want the Browns to win, I don't really care who the coach is that does it or the GM that does it. I want the Browns to win so Browns fans can win, because I'm a Browns fan. My dad's a Browns fan. My brother's a Browns fan. My city, Cleveland, I'm from, a lot of people, Browns fans. I want the Browns to win, because when the Browns win, Cleveland wins. But boy, when they lose, Cleveland loses too. And there's no escaping that. I know some people are going to act like they're not going to be Browns fans anymore. I've played that game before. If you've been a Browns fan up until this point, winning wasn't what was keeping you on. A competent organization wasn't what was keeping you a fan, right? So you'll be back eventually because you love this team and you're sick, just like me. So I'm not even going to pretend, do that whole thing, act like I'm tired of the Browns. I hate the Browns. I'm like, I don't hate the Browns. I hate the position that the people in charge of the Browns have put me in, because they don't own the Browns to me. The Browns are owned by the city of Cleveland to me, the people of Cleveland. This organization, this brand really means nothing if it's not associated with the city of Cleveland. And that's what bums me out about this whole thing. Hopefully they find a good resolution to this. Hopefully they do something that doesn't continue to leave Browns fans in the crossfire of player disputes and organizational disputes. Hopefully that all gets figured out. And I'm not going to ask for anybody's pity. And I don't think Browns fans should either. But it's just how I feel. I guess the way I could put it, said I'm not even angry. I'm just disappointed. Y'all have a great day. Having a better night. Peace.